Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement. Good day, Saint Lucia, and welcome to the program Agriculture on the Move. My name is Phillip Sydney. Today we are discussing a very important project that is to be established in Saint Lucia, and that is Degradation Neutrality. Yes, it's a mouthful. However, at the end of the discussion, you will understand what we're talking about. To do such, we have with me in studio Mr. Alfred Prospere, who is the Deputy Chief Forestry Officer in the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries, Physical Planning, Natural Resources, and Cooperatives. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sydney.
Yeah, my good friend Prospere, you've been in the ministry for a while, and of course, we always have interaction, and we have done a lot for Saint Lucia.
Very good. You're right, correct.
Prospere, tell us something. Tell the public. It's a new project. You look up at Land Degradation Neutrality. A lot of people probably don't understand what it means. So could you explain? Let us know what it's all about.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sydney. Land Degradation Neutrality, what is called LDN, is basically, in brief, the amount of land resources that are required to ensure that the ecosystem services are maintained, food security is maintained, at the same time ensuring that there is no reduction in land degradation, but an increase in restoration or rehabilitation of lands. Okay. So it's basically the amount that is required for all those ecosystems to function, at the same time ensuring food security is maintained, but ensuring that the amount of land required for that does not decrease, but become stable or increase.
Great.
Now that's a very new term, and it was born out of the United Nations Convention to combat desertification, which is called the UNCCD.
Okay.
And I am the focal point for Saint Lucia on this convention. Okay. This convention came out in Rio de Janeiro in 1994, when countries were suffering as a result of experiencing major problems with regards to drought, land degradation, and desertification. Now in Saint Lucia, we are not in a state currently where we are suffering as a result of desertification. But in terms of land degradation, it is becoming a major problem for us. And we see this after a rain event, what happens in terms of the rivers, in terms of the level of turbidity in the rivers. So that means in the hinterlands, in the upper watersheds, middle and lower watersheds, we are experiencing high soil erosion that leads to land degradation, and that can really affect our country because it can impact negatively on food security, it can impact negatively on water quality and quantity. The impacts of climate change will be worse if we do not make an effort to address land degradation in Saint Lucia.
What is desertification?
Desertification is basically a state whereby the biological resources in a particular land or soil has become so limited or low that it reduces the capacity of that soil or land to produce food. And you get a lot of these situations happening in areas where you have high temperature, high levels of drought, which reduces the capacity of the soil to produce food. Okay. Now in places like Africa and those other countries, we have a lot of areas where desertification is causing a number of populations to be affected because they cannot produce food on that particular piece of land because of the state by which it has actually gotten in. Okay. The fertility is lost. Everything that allows that land to produce food is lost, so it is in a state of desertification, or what we call desert areas.
Okay. What are the the culprits, the factors that contribute to land degradation in Saint Lucia?
Well, land degradation is a serious concern in Saint Lucia, and a lot of it stems from our practices when we deal with land. The first thing is removal of vegetation on land simply leads to soil erosion because you are exposing the soil to the elements. As, for example, when it rains, that soil, because it does not have a cover, the raindrops impacts on the soil and it causes what you call soil erosion, which means movement of the surface layer of the soil to another area. When that continues to happen, it means that the fertility level of that soil is lost on a regular basis. And as a result, the land has reached a state where it's not in a state that can allow it to produce the amount of food and to be able to allow the rain water to infiltrate in the soil. So what you call runoff happens, and that is what that leads to degradation. Now, when that happens on slopes, that soil eventually gets to the river and the river basin, and that's why, unlike the many years ago when you would see stones in our rivers, you now see a lot of silt. That is soil that has actually washed down the slopes and settled into our rivers. So that is an example of what land degradation is. Now, a lot of the crops that we grow, for example, the bananas, it requires that most, if not all of the vegetation has to be removed. And if you notice what our farmers were doing before, they were actually cultivating bananas and even dashing on very steep slopes. So that led to it. And also, when you have natural disasters like hurricanes, it causes our forest cover to be destroyed in some areas. And that also leads to landslides, which means that it can also lead to land degradation.
Farmers are humans are the main culprits. Apart from humans, what other contributing factors?
Yes, well, again, urban development is important because you see large areas of forests that are cleared for new developments for housing. Road construction, especially in forested areas, also requires removal of a lot of soil for your road to be constructed. Cultivation of marijuana. You know, a lot of the guys go very close to the rivers because they want the water to be able to, The farming practices adopted on the slopes, the way the farmers go in and put in the drains, all of that lead to that. But we also have natural disasters like hurricanes, storms, that causes our forests to be lost. For example, in 2010, in the forest reserve alone, we lost 500 plus acres of land due to landslides. Now just imagine all of that soil where it gets to. It eventually gets into the rivers.
And of course the sea.
Yes, so it's both natural and man-made causes leading to soil erosion and land degradation.
That project, where is it at now? At what stage?
Okay, Saint Lucia signed on to the LDN project target setting process in 2016. Now there are 116 countries out of the 192 countries that are parties to the convention that have actually signed on to the convention. The first thing we did was we had an Interception Workshop in January 2017 where we got in all the key stakeholders in Saint Lucia to discuss the project and to be able to have them buy in terms of the benefits and everything to Saint Lucia. So we had key stakeholders like Ministry of Agriculture, Sustainable Development, National Trust, NC, and a lot of other organizations that are involved in land management. We brought them together and we discussed the project in detail with them in 2017, January. And we also, out of that, formed what we call a working group. That is a group comprising of persons representing various agencies that will work with me as the UNCCD focal point to be able to drive the process of getting this early and target setting process to its end. We had this first Interception Workshop. We had a validation workshop in January of this year where we got a consultant who looked at all of the data we had in terms of land cover. Because what I forgot to mention is that that process requires 3 indicators that would allow us to be able to measure progress under that project. One is land cover. We need to be able to show that what our land cover changes have been over years, over time.
Right.
Secondly, land productivity, how capable the land is able to produce food. And the last one is carbon stocks below and above ground. So these are the three indicators that, that we have to use as a measure of allowing Saint Lucia to be able to determine what progress are we making in terms of achieving land degradation neutrality between now and 2030. And so the validation workshop required that we had data for all three of those indicators. But currently we only had some data available for land cover. So what the UNCCD did, realizing that a lot of those countries were lacking data on land productivity and carbon stocks, they provided each of those countries with what we call global data set, where they use satellite imagery to be able to provide that data that is not available here. But the important thing about it is that because of the fact that Saint Lucia does not have data for land productivity and carbon stocks, over time, if Saint Lucia were to be able to get that data, it would complement the data that the UNCCD is providing us. That data allows us to establish what we call a baseline. Where do we start in terms of land cover? Is it 2015? Is it 2010? But the project requires that we start with 2015.
Okay. We do for a break now.
Yeah,
we'll continue our carbon stock. I need you to explain to the public what is you mean by carbon stock.
Yes, thank you.
Watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned. Back soon.
Chemical treatment through the spraying of fungicides is one of the most effective ways of controlling black sigatoka disease. Do not spray while it is raining or if it is likely to rain within the next 3 to 4 hours. The oil fungicide mix may be washed away. Avoid spraying at a time of day when it's too windy, wet, or hot. On a hot, sunny day, banana and plantain leaves tend to fold, making it difficult to trap most of the spray oil fungicide mix either on top or below the leaf surface. It is better to spray and apply the recommended fungicide during early morning or late afternoon when it is relatively cooler and when the leaves are open and extended. When applying chemical treatment, the spray operator or farmer should always target the youngest leaves of the plant. Do not apply excess spray material to the plant. Ensure that the entire crop or field is sprayed in the same application. Unsprayed plants can become more easily infected, causing the disease to develop and spread quickly to healthy plants.
For more information on how to treat and control black sigatoka on your farm or in your backyard garden, contact the Black Sigatoka Management Unit at 451-5491, 451-5894, or email bpmu@candw.lc. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Agriculture in collaboration with the International Cooperation and Development Fund of the Republic of China on Taiwan.
Welcome back to the program. We're discussing land degradation neutrality. And of course, with me is Mr. Alfred Prospere. Prospere, what are the benefits to be derived in Saint Lucia from that project?
There are tremendous benefits to be derived from this project because basically this project came out of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 SDGs. And Goal 15.3 states that there is need for countries to restore degraded lands, to halt desertification, and to rehabilitate degraded lands. That goal links directly to the UNCCD. Now, if you rehabilitate lands, you are actually helping to attain other sustainable development goals, like, for example, clean water, climate change mitigation, food security. So by Saint Lucia taking on that project, it is allowing us to be able to attain other sustainable development goals that the government signed on to in 2015.
Okay.
So it is important that we bear that in mind. That's one. We know what has happened to Saint Lucia with regards to the banana industry. We had acres and acres of lands that were cleared in the 70s and 80s because of the banana boom.
Definitely.
And that led to a lot of land degradation and we see what's happening in our rivers, there is an urgent need for us to restore those lands, to be able to get those lands into productive use. Now we're seeing a trend from natural forests where it was at a low in the 70s and 80s, and we are observing an increase in forest cover because a lot of those abandoned lands are now getting back into some vegetative cover. That's a good sign, but we don't know when a market will come in for dashing or mango or something, and those farmers can go back into those lands and clear them, simply because they have very little or no regulations preventing them from doing that.
Okay.
We see what happens in terms of the tourism industry. After heavy rain or rains, that is, the tourists cannot use our beaches because of the water quality there. So there is an urgent need for Saint Lucia to take time to take stock of itself and to be able to address that. LDN is the only sure way of making that happen, because it is going to allow us to set targets that would allow us to reverse land degradation in Saint Lucia and focus more on rehabilitation of degraded lands.
Are you going to prioritize and look at areas in Saint Lucia that are highly degrading as we speak, and to ensure that you started those areas first?
That is a very good point, and that is one of the considerations. Because, for example, places like Sozel, for those persons, and I'm not deliberately targeting Sozel, but places like Olignon, where when you go to Olignon, you see that rocky, exposed areas there. In places like Sozel, you will go and you see that there is no activity happening there, especially during certain times of the year. That is a sign of massive land degradation taking place there. Soufre, which is very fragile, we call it Dashing Plantation, Fonse Jacques, and we know what happened to us, to these people in 2010. We can decide that because those areas are very critical, that our focus should be starting work in those areas because they are very critical, right? So it can be localized in terms of land degradation, focusing on small communities at first, but we can also make it island-wide. But what you're saying is good, because the areas that needs priority, like Soufre and Sozel, may be a good starting point for the project.
What sort of activities are you going to start in those areas?
Yeah, basically we have to look at the areas that are degraded. And I just forgot to mention that when we establish our baseline, that baseline will tell us exactly where we are in terms of land degradation. But we have a target that we have to set until 2030. Because we are hoping that the project, by what it states, is that by 2030, the world is supposed to be called Land Degradation Neutral World. So for Saint Lucia, we are hoping that we will reach a Land Degradation Neutral World, Saint Lucia, by 2030.
Okay.
So we have to set what we call a target. So our target could well be between 2018 and 2030 that we must rehabilitate, for example, 500 acres of land, but at the same time ensuring that we do not allow more lands to be degraded. But we can say between 2018 and 2020, our focus is going to be in Soufre and Sozel, and our target is 100. That allows us, when our reporting is due for the UNCCC to say, in 2 years, yes, we were able to achieve X amount of land, but the focus was in those two communities.
Okay. You're looking at both forest trees and fruit trees.
Yes.
Are you also looking at other soil conservation measures like contour drains, graded drains, grass barriers, stone barriers? All of these things are part of the activities?
Very good point. And when we speak of rehabilitation, a lot of people may think it's just putting trees. If you plant along the contour, you will reduce soil erosion.
Correct.
If your drains are constructed in accordance with the contour, you'll be reducing soil erosion. A stone barrier on a steep slope will arrest the soil and prevent the soil from being transported down slope.
That's correct.
Forest trees will provide a cover to avoid the raindrops from impacting directly on the surface. So there are various measures that allows you to restore land. So for example, in areas where you have steep places where people cannot go, we can simply collect seeds and broadcast. Germination will take place. And the process will continue where soil will not be eroded.
Okay.
So there are going to be a whole set of measures. It's not going to be just planting trees, but a lot of other measures that would allow us. And we have done that because under the Australian project, we were able to rehabilitate almost 500 acres of lands in the forest reserve using those various measures.
In terms of cost, who's going to bear that cost? I mean, are you going to give farmers the planting material in terms of planting? I mean, how is that going to work out?
Very good question. After we've established our baseline for Saint Lucia, what Saint Lucia will be doing through the UNCCD is to seek funding for what we call projects, implementing projects that will address the LDN issue. So we may get funding from, let's say, the Green Fund, sustainable financing. We may get money from Jeff. And what it would allow us to do is to create a project concept that would allow us to target various areas for planting. Definitely, it would not be the cost of the farmer to buy the plants. If we're talking land degradation and how we're going to be, addressing the problem, it would be best for forestry or any organization to provide the plants to the farmers. And maybe think of an incentive that will allow the farmer to maintain the plants. Because in the past, we've planted hundreds and thousands of trees.
And where are they now?
I don't know where they are. You understand? We may have to look at projects that will allow for an incentive. So, for example, if you have 5 acres of land in the upper basin of the watershed, but you understand the value of keeping that land under conservation because it protects the water resources downstream, what is in there for you to allow you to do it?
Correct.
But downslope, because you are protecting your forest, this other guy downslope feels that I can cut mine because I'm already benefiting from your land. I can get clean water.
For irrigation for his property.
This is a sort of approach or strategy that I think we need to adopt going forward. But definitely we will engage the landowners, the farmers, and as much as possible, I do not think it will be a cost for them in terms of having to purchase plants.
Okay, we are due for another break. We are due for our second break. Stay tuned.
What's in the food you're eating? Do you really even know? All the chemicals and hormones used to accelerate their growth. All the artificial flavoring, sweeteners and colors too. We consume and we don't spare a thought for the damage that they'll do. No, think about the children. Think about the children. How will we save them? Chemicals and GMOs are not the solution. Use organic and join.
Excessive agrochemical use, additives, and genetically modified foods are harmful to health and the environment. Join the good food revolution. Grow, buy, and consume organic. A message from Rise Saint Lucia and the Ministry of Sustainable Development with funding from the GEF Small Grants Program, UNDP.
The good food revolution.
Welcome back to the program, Agriculture on the Move. As we approach our final segment, tell us about your other collaborants, your other stakeholders that are going to be involved in that process for the way forward.
The UNCCD is key, but we also have local partners, regional partners. So for example, a regional partner that is very important in this process is called PISLM, Partnership Initiative for Sustainable Land Management.
Okay.
But that office is based in Trinidad. We have a number of partners here, Saint Lucia National Trust, National Conservation Authority, Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Agriculture, Sustainable Development, Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, Trust for Management of Rivers, and a number of other agencies and community-based organizations that are all involved in land management issues in one way or the other. So at our meeting last year, we brought all of those persons and stakeholders together, and we are still working with those stakeholders because at the end of the day, I not want it to be target setting, but it's a forestry department and Ministry of Agriculture alone. All these stakeholders, agencies, etc., have to have a stake in it, and for us to agree for the country what is a baseline that is real and what is achievable. So we are working with those partners, and we are going to continue that process until we have established what a target would be for Saint Lucia.
I did the Ministry of Infrastructure, are they on board?
Yes, sorry, Ministry of Infrastructure, I forgot to mention. They're very critical.
They're critical.
Yes.
In fact, as we were speaking in the green room earlier, over the years, they keep going back and desilting, and they keep desilting, and they put the silt on the bank that goes back into the river when it rains. I mean, what's happening?
And that's a very good point, because it is a concern to the Forestry Department. And we have had a few meetings with the Ministry of Infrastructure. And I'm in no way criticizing destructively what the ministry does, because it's important for the silting to be done. Because if you do not do that, you're going to have flooding in the communities. But what I would have really liked to see is more collaboration with the forestry department, because you are spending millions of dollars each year to desilt rivers in the various communities, but you are not addressing the source of the problem.
That's right.
Which is the upper watersheds, where you have all this soil exposed, all this land degradation happening, all this erosion taking place. And I was just saying to them, I've said it on several occasions, that if there is more collaboration with, say, forestry, an allocation is made to the Ministry of Infrastructure of 10 million. Just give us 1 million each year, and we will be addressing or attempting to address the problem of slope.
At source.
At the source. Because if we do not address the problem there is no time soon that we will stop the silting. Because you remove silt, we have tons of silt up the river that is just waiting to replace it.
Okay.
Secondly, we have to also develop a better strategy as to when to desilt.
Right.
Because if you desilt 2 months before the rainy season, it means that this silt has not settled.
That's right.
So after every rain, it will go back into the stream.
Yes.
Even when we rehabilitate those rivers, very often you get destruction because the equipment that is doing the silting very often destroy the very trees. So I would just urge that there is more collaboration between those two agencies, so we can come up with a better strategy to be able to deal with the source as against just removing silt on a year-to-year basis.
There's another point I brought up with you concerning farmers. Say that this is a farmer who has, 3 acres of land, and really, it is not conducive for farming, but that's all he has, okay? What is in place? What measures are in place to assist him? Maybe to give him an alternative area which is conducive for farming, and take this as his farm for conservation.
Yes, under the Forest Act, there is room for land acquisition. Very often we have to do an assessment of the land to see if it's critical, if it's important for us, because you get a lot of applicants indicating to us that they want the piece of land exchange because they have no use for it anymore. But it depends on where it's located. It would be bad for us as a department to acquire lands outside of the forest reserve, but it's very difficult to integrate it. It is much easier for us if the lands are joining the forest reserve, so it's easily integrated.
Or to be acquired, yeah.
Yes. Now, when we have situations like that, when farmers make those requests, if we cannot acquire the land for reasons that is not contiguous with the forest reserve, we will work with that farmer to help him rehabilitate and to advise and to provide technical support. That is what we do. Okay. But we're really not in a situation where we can acquire every piece of land.
I understand that.
That is.
Pros, we have a final words from you, eh?
Yes, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to talk about this project. I know it's a new project, it's a new concept, but I know over time, Saint Lucians will be more sensitized, more informed about the project. But it's basically to leave us saying that it's really a project that attempts to address sustainable land management in Saint Lucia. And we need that at a time, looking at the impacts of climate change, etc. I want Saint Lucians to be able to embrace that project, and feel free to contact me or Forestry Department in terms of other issues related to that project. But it's a project that we're hoping that will end before December, and so by sometime next year, all Saint Lucians will know what is our target as a nation in terms of addressing or dealing with sustainable land management issues in Saint Lucia.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for viewing the program. That was, of course, the Deputy Chief Forestry Officer, Mr. Prospere, and we're hoping that that project will be, as he said, is innovative, but we are going to grab onto it and to see results in the end. So I'd like to thank you for being here. Thank you again for viewing the program. I'm Phillip Sydney saying, but remember, agriculture is our business, and eat fresh. St. Lucia's best. I'm Phillip Sydney. Goodbye. Yeah, man. Thank you very much.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.